If you enjoy this content, then consider supporting me on Patreon.
Okay. Oh.
Winter has come and gone, and arguably one of the greatest television series of all time had come to a close just several months ago. And although the later seasons may have increasingly declined in quality, especially with the controversy surrounding Season 8, I'm here instead to highlight the better moments. I'm pretty certain none of you need in-depth discussions on the unsatisfying character arcs, anticlimactic villain deaths, nonsensical plot points, inexplicable Starbucks coffee cups, and online petitions urging rewrites of the entirety of the final season. Because there's clearly an almost unlimited supply of those videos out there already. My job is to allow you to look back on this show with a sense of nostalgia and appreciate not only the incredible storytelling, but particularly the spectacular R-rated fantasy action that I know all of you love. Also, if you haven't watched all the episodes yet, then obviously this video might ruin your viewing experience just a little by revealing pretty important narrative details.
Whoa. Spoilers. I haven't read all the books yet.
You gonna read the books?
Yes, Dean, I like to read books. You know, the ones without pictures?
Since this is a list of fight scenes, larger battle sequences will not be included unless they feature extended one-on-one fights between individual characters. And obviously, we're talking the TV show and not George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novel series, though I will be mentioning some relevant info from them. But let's not waste any more time and begin our countdown. So please sit back, indulge in your finest Dornish wine, and enjoy this list of the 10 best fights from Game of Thrones.
Such a small pack of wool.
Back when Jaime Lannister still had 2 hands and Eddard Stark still had 1 head, we were all treated to one of the first major fights in the series. A who would win scenario between Prince Charming and Boromir.
If you threaten my lord again...
As in, I'm going to open your lord from balls to brains and see what Starks are made of.
Jaime, of course, has arrived in Winterfell to demand that his brother Tyrion be freed from imprisonment after being suspected of the attempted murder of Eddard's son, Bran, which was, as we all know, actually Jaime's doing. But being the protective father he is, Eddard, whose nickname is Ned for some reason, refuses to obey Jaime's command. After Jaime kills Jorah Cassel, captain of the guards of House Stark, Ned and Jaime engage in a brief battle of blades. Most would assume Jaime's victory is assured given his reputation as one of Westeros' top swordsmen and the youngest Kingsguard in history. But Lord Eddard, seemingly past his prime, is able to hold his own surprisingly well against the Kingslayer. You might not have been aware that the two never even fought in the novels, with Ned being portrayed as more a battlefield tactician than a swordmaster. But stunt coordinators Paul Jennings and Buster Reeves instead gave us a version of Ned that stood evenly matched with Jaime, forcing him to realize this is one king he cannot easily slay. Unfortunately, a bored Lannister fanboy cuts their duel short. Jaime, knowing that one does not simply dishonorably disrupt a duel, tells him to kiss his fist. This is just one of many events that leads to the War of the Five Kings and is directly tied with Tyrion's trial by combat, which is next on the list. For the number 9 pick, we jump to the very next episode of Season 1, where we find Catelyn Stark and her sister Lysa Arryn in the Eyrie holding Tyrion captive for several crimes he never committed, including the assassination of Lysa's husband, Jon. Bronn decides to fight for Tyrion after requesting a trial by combat, knowing that Lannister gold is much too tempting to refuse given how they always pay their debts. Lysa chooses the Vale's greatest knight, Sir Vardis Egen, as her champion. Apparently at a disadvantage, Bronn nevertheless turns the tables on Sir Vardis, using his own heavy armor against him by dancing around and gradually tiring him out. With his lighter weight granting him more speed and maneuverability, Bronn cleverly uses the surrounding environment and even random spectators to slow down Vardis. Though the much bulkier knight does occasionally present a struggle for a favorite sellsword, he still manages to target exposed gaps between the armor plating until a fatigued Vardis is finally held under the mercy of Bronn's sword. While the book says Bronn finishing off Vardis after trapping him underneath a fallen statue, the show sees a more dramatic ending, with Vardis sent flying through the moon door. Jennings and Reeves return as choreographers in this sequence, displaying the necessity of dirty tactics in a real fight.
You don't fight with honor.
No. He did.
From one cutthroat to another, we're introduced to the legend of Jin Ali himself, Karl Tanner. This former Night's Watch brother had led a mutiny against Lord Commander Jorah Mormont, killing him and the incestuous wildling Craster, taking control of Craster's keep and continuing to abuse and rape Craster's daughter wives. Some reinforcements, including Jon Snow, eventually arrive. But Jon and his inconveniently long weapon are outmatched by Karl, whose deadly dual-wielded daggers are far better suited to the confined spaces of the inner keep.
Longsword is a bad option in close quarters.
As was the case with Bronn and Vardis Egen, Karl Tanner proves once again with his constant barrage of taunts that if you want to survive, you gotta fight dirty. Karl happily exchanges some of this wisdom from his days as an assassin in King's Landing to the fairly inexperienced Jon Snow, who otherwise knows nothing about practical combat.
You know what's wrong with honor?
This same wisdom Jon finds very useful in the future when faced with the physically imposing Magnar or the Thenn, Styr. Ironically, Karl Tanner's utter disrespect for honor is ultimately the cause of his own demise, with Jon Snow finally ending his short but costly rebellion. Combined with choreography from Paul Herbert and David Forman, actor Burn Gorman elevates what was originally a minor book role into a brief yet undeniably badass performance as a skull-drinking rebel we know as Karl fucking Tanner. Traveling away from the far north beyond the Wall, we journey across the narrow sea to Meryn, where Jorah Mormont, Lord of the Friend Zone, has been exiled by Daenerys Targaryen after discovering his past objective of spying on her under the command of Varys. Seeking redemption, Jorah rises up the ranks in the fighting pits, being given the opportunity to participate in the Great Games at the Great Pit of Daznak. Here we witness warriors from all over the world in a gladiatorial battle royale which was, interestingly enough, filmed in a real coliseum called the Plaza de Toros in Osna, Spain, ordinarily used for bullfighting. Emmy Award-winning stunt coordinator Raleigh Earlham along with Richard Bradshaw and Paul Shapcott are the ones to thank for these intricately choreographed sequences featuring a diverse set of weapons and cultures all clashing in one glorious fight to the death. After initially struggling against a Norvoshi warrior priest, Jorah finds a way to defeat the Axeman and focus on his next opponent, a Braavosi swordsman. However, the Braavosi's water dance style, a martial art which I promise you will see more of later, is too elusive for Jorah to handle, giving him some deja vu and almost being delivered a killing blow. Luckily, the Braavosi has a Karl Tanner moment, leaving Jorah with the last remaining fighter, a Meereenese spearman. Jorah appears to be outskilled yet again, but by borrowing a move from his previous opponent and possibly employing some Dark Souls tactics, he stands as a triumphant victor. Sadly, Dany fails to be impressed.
Are you not entertained?
Until Jorah again demonstrates his undying loyalty by taking out the Son of Harpy assailant seconds before it's too late. Venturing back to Westeros, we come to Brienne of Tarth, who has already faced the likes of Sir Jaime Lannister and Loras Tyrell. Having vowed to protect Arya Stark under oath by her mother Catelyn Stark, Brienne crosses paths with none other than Sandor Clegane, the Hound. Being in disagreement with who deserves to defend Arya, the two decide to resolve their differences in what can be metaphorically described as the Game of Thrones equivalent of two parents battling for child custody. Although both wear armor and carry big fucking swords, it's arguable that Brienne's Valyrian steel blade, Oathkeeper, as well as the Hound having been fatigued, famished, and wounded, might have given Brienne the upper hand. But technical details shouldn't undermine the victory of this great beast of woman.
I have no wish to kill you, sir.
I'm not a knight.
As soon as we believe their unnecessary altercation to be over, the background music is silenced and we're reminded of the absolute importance of dirty fighting. Unlike the elaborately choreographed pit fights of the number 7 pick, Mike Tyson of Tarth momentarily forgets all her fancy blade work and reveals her true animalistic instincts in a primal bloody brawl for survival echoing back from the Stone Age. Unsurprisingly, the stunt coordinators behind Karl Tanner and Jon Snow's fight, Paul Herbert and David Forman, also staged this scene, teaching us yet again that in a duel to the death, all notions of honor must be cast aside. And we're all fortunate to have had the pleasure to view this epic engagement between these two Westerosi powerhouses, as it did not in fact ever occur in the books. Brienne and the Hound haven't even interacted once. One similarity between the show and novels though is Arya abandoning a dying Sandor Clegane by a cliffside, except that the books imply a more ambiguous ending, which makes our next entry all the more intriguing. With the Hound's final fate in the novels left in uncertainty, the show instead allows further possibilities to explore the character. Namely, his infamous sibling rivalry with his older brother Gregory Kelley, also known as the Mountain. Prior to this episode, the brothers never got a chance to finish a full uninterrupted fight, which is why this long-awaited event, which fans have creatively dubbed the Cleganebowl, provided a fairly divisive season, at least one satisfying conclusion. Now there is a character in the novels by the name of Sir Robert Strong, an undead knight who strongly resembles Gregory Kelley, appearing after the Mountain allegedly died.
Yeah, that's you. That's what you've always been.
But the show makes it clear that the mountain was indeed resurrected by Qyburn and transformed into a zombified killing machine, which presents an even more frustrating challenge for the Hound, who wants nothing more than to see his brother just die already. The choreographic artists responsible for Jorah's pit fights, Riley Earlham, Richard Bradshaw, and Paul Shapcott, are joined by stunt coordinators Nick Chopping and Ben Wright to bring to life this gritty, flaming finale. Another higher entry on this list is also referenced here, where Sandor's eyes are nearly gouged out, but in comparison to a certain Dornishman, he takes it like a champ. Ever since being horribly burned and disfigured by Gregor, the Hound has spent a lifetime attempting to overcome his pyrophobia, and now as all King's Landing crumbles around him, he is given his final test. Unable to cut down his unfeeling elder brother, the Hound chooses to send both of them into an infernal climax. Sandor Clegane's character arc comes full circle, finally finishing a brotherly feud that began and ended in fire. In the days when King's Landing still stood high over all the Seven Kingdoms, Arya Stark had recently spent her days on so-called dancing lessons with a Braavosi swordmaster by the name of Syrio Forel. Similar to her encounter with Brienne, Arya experiences some stranger danger when Sir Meryn Trant summons her on behalf of Eddard Stark. Of course, Syrio, seeing right through Trant's lies, suspects the Kingsguard's secret orders to either kill or capture Arya. As was promised earlier in the list, Season 1 showcases the incredible elegance and fluidity of the sword style known as the water dance for the very first time. Actor Miltos Gerolamo, who portrayed Syrio Forel, collaborated with the late-famed cinematic fencing choreographer William Hobbs to adapt this form of swordplay to the small screen. Incorporating elements of fencing and Tai Chi, the water dance is also reminiscent of Bruce Lee's martial arts philosophy Jeet Kune Do of being like water. With additional choreography by Paul Herbert, David Forman, and Ivo Christoph, we're left in awe as the first sword of Braavos effortlessly dispatches the Lannister guards with a mere wooden sword, flowing like a gentle stream and crashing like the ocean tides. Despite the showrunners confirming Syrio Forel's off-screen death at the hands of Meryn Trant, some of his fans like to believe Syrio successfully knocked out Trant and fled. Either way, at least we know Arya later avenged her dancing master by murdering Trant herself.
What do we say to the god of death?
Not today.
Go.
After completing her training under the Faceless Men and having individually refined her water dancing skills, Arya finds herself finally back home in Winterfell with her tie-back hair and outfit strangely resembling her father's. There, she re-encounters Brienne and asks the woman who personally defeated the Hound to continue to train with her in the ways of the sword. Confidently carrying her thin, slender blade, Needle, Arya utilizes her smaller stature and greater agility, like her former teacher, Syrio, to outmaneuver Brienne, striking unarmored areas of the body. The Hound at once scoffed at Arya, claiming that Syrio was likely beaten by Meryn Trant because, in the Hound's own words,
Your friend's dead, and Meryn Trant's not. Because Trant had armor, and a big fucking sword.
But now Arya has perfected her swordsmanship to the point of leveling the playing field against a more heavily armed and armored opponent. Slightly annoyed by Arya's quick cat-like reflexes and nimble movements, Brienne kicks her to the ground, reminding Arya not to underestimate a physically stronger adversary. Arya regains her composure nonetheless, and while we may not know if Brienne was taking it easy on Arya, we should know actor Maisie Williams was certainly not taking her television role easy at all. Maisie, who is right-handed, intentionally fought with her left hand to stay faithful to Arya's character. Both actors skillfully timing their choreography, coordinated by Riley Earlham, Richard Bradshaw, and Paul Shapcott. The fight closes with Arya pulling an unexpected knife catch move, the same move that would later be used to vanquish the Night King. With their blades pointed at each other's throats, the duel ends as a draw. There are obviously no stakes in this friendly sparring match, but in terms of his worthiness on this list, watching Arya's evolution from orphan Stark to stoic merciless master assassin reaching its peak in a fight scene involving possibly the two greatest female sword fighters in Westeros simply speaks for itself.
Who taught you how to do that?
No one.
Also, the water dance is the best. A few seasons earlier in King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister, in spite of his innocence, is put on yet another trial by combat. This time by Sister Cersei, who is certain he had poisoned to death her son, the sociopathic Child King Joffrey Baratheon. Tyrion just cannot catch a break, can he? Thankfully, the Dornish prince Oberyn Martell happens to be visiting and volunteers as Tyrion's champion. His motivation being to seek vengeance on the mountain, which he repeatedly states over and over again.
I am the brother of Elia,
Martell, I'm going to hear you confess before you die. You raped my sister. You murdered her. You killed her children. Say it now and we can make this quick. Yeah. You raped her! You murdered her! You killed her children!
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Stop saying that!
Previous fights on this list have taught us that speed and skill can counter superior size and strength, but it's the number 2 entry that exemplifies this tactical theory. By pitting Oberyn's incredible combative athleticism against the man who has the thickest armor and biggest fucking sword of them all, you get a fight that will be sung in legends for ages to come. With his light leather armor keeping him agile and his spear maintaining a cautious distance, the Red Viper slips in and out of Gregory Kelley's monstrous swings, constantly coiling around his prey to locate any vulnerable openings for attack. The scene plays out almost the same as in the books, besides a few minor differences such as Oberyn deciding to wear a helmet and heavier armor, as well as reflecting sunlight off of his shield to temporarily blind the mountain. Actor Pedro Pascal was occasionally stunt doubled by Liang Yang, a Mission Impossible follow fame, for the more difficult segments of the fight, but he performed many of the moves on his own. For Oberyn's exotic spear fighting techniques, Pascal was trained in the highly acrobatic and stylized art of wushu by Chinese martial arts master Hu Jianqiang, who is known for having appeared alongside Jet Li in his Shaolin Temple film series. Together with fight rehearsals with a series of swordmaster C.C. Smith and choreography by Paul Herbert, David Forman, and Ivo Christoph, the absence of music heightens the tension, as one single mistake could end Oberyn's life. But in a short moment of glory, Oberyn succeeds in bringing down the mountain, but just as Bronn had foreshadowed before turning down this same fight, Oberyn's careless arrogance and sentimentality result in his terrifyingly gruesome death. Gregory Kelley does confess in the end and remains in a state of agonizing pain afterwards from the Viper's manticore venom-tipped spear, though not without a terrible cost.
Have made their will known. Tyrion Lannister, in the name of King Tommen of the House Baratheon, first of his name, you are hereby sentenced to death.
At the very top of this list is what many have called one of the greatest swordsmen to ever walk the lands of Westeros. The legendary Sword of the Morning, Sir Arthur Dayne. Bran Stark and the Three-Eyed Raven's visions transport us into the past towards the end of Robert's Rebellion, where young Eddard Stark and a squad of fellow soldiers attempt to rescue Ned's sister Lyanna Stark from the Tower of Joy, guarded by Arthur Dayne and Lord Commander of the Kingsguard Gerald Hightower. The novels depict the showdown as one of Ned's febrile dreams rather than a vision, but the fight itself is never described in detail. Stunt coordinators Rowley Earlham, Richard Bradshaw, and Paul Shapcott were thus put up to the task of fully realizing this imagined engagement. Ned is able to take out Gerald Hightower on his own, leaving Arthur Dayne to deal with all 4 of the remaining rebels by himself. Episode director Daniel Sackheim stated that he took creative liberties by having Arthur Dayne dual-wield his swords to quote-unquote exhibit his superhuman prowess, which also answers one of Jaime Lannister's questions as to why some knights carry 2 swords. Arthur's main sword is confirmed to be Dawn, the ancestral blade of House Dayne, said to have been forged from the unknown metals of a meteorite, giving a Valyrian steel-like quality. In contrast to the usual overly edited close-up camera work of most Game of Thrones fights, this scene was shot with more wide-open views and longer takes, allowing us to fully appreciate Dayne's masterful blade work as he single-handedly slays all of Ned's companions. Ned is definitely no stranger to excellent swordplay himself, but Arthur Dayne's swordsmanship is second to none, who soon disarms his opponent. Then, out of nowhere, Howland Reed drives his dagger through the back of Dayne's neck, saving Ned's life at the very last minute, also invalidating the claim that Eddard Stark had defeated Arthur Dayne in single combat. Say it with me, kids, always fight dirty. Seriously though, what is it with all the best fighters getting stabbed from behind? Not only is this the #1 fight scene from Game of Thrones, but it's one vital piece of information that will help in shockingly revealing a long-standing fan theory of Jon Snow's true Targaryen identity.
We'll visit again another time.
I want to see where he's going.
Time to go.
Father!
Before I end this video, here are some special mentions that didn't quite fit the criteria of the official list. Choreographed by Paul Jennings and Buster Reeves, the fight featuring Khal, Drogo, and Mago is so one-sided that it's decidedly more of a public execution than an actual fight. You might recall that larger battle sequences don't count for this list, but the Massacre of Meryn, coordinated by Rowley Earlham, Richard Bradshaw, and Paul Shapcott, is halfway between a fight and full-scale battle, and so barely missed the final list. If you wanted to read the longer original script for each of these special entries, they are in the description. But with those two special entries out of the way, now our watch has ended. So thank you to those of you who had the stamina to stick around for this possibly needlessly extended top 10, and thank you to my patrons who are listed in the description. Any of these fight scenes could have been ranked in a completely different order, and to be quite frank, I still don't 100% agree with my own selections. So please comment down below on what order you'd go with, whether the special entries deserve official spots, which fights I left out altogether, and how I talked too much and made this video too damn long. But there's no doubt there are two things we can all agree on. Fight dirty, and don't get stabbed in the back. By the way, anyone excited for the upcoming prequel series? Anyways, I'll shut up now, so Valar Morghulis, and farewell.